Before these stories begin, I want you to pause for 1 second. Look around and comment below where you are listening from right now. Because tonight, the darkness is closer than you think. You're about to enter a world where a house is alive and breathing, where a voice in the static knows your secrets, where a man only walks when the sun goes down, and where a hotel room already knows your name. This is Grimp Tap. If you're brave enough to stay, then turn off the lights and let the fear begin. Story 1. The House That Breathes. From the very first second you hear my voice, something is already watching you. Yes, you, not from the screen, not from your phone, but from the space just behind you, where the air feels heavier, where shadows stretch too far, where silence feels like it's holding its breath. And before I tell you what happened to me, before I tell you why I still wake up screaming at 3:17 every single night, I need you to do one thing. If you enjoy stories that crawl into your mind and stay there, if you feel that quiet thrill when fear wraps around your spine, then pause for one heartbeat, tap like, tap subscribe, and welcome to Grimp Tap. Because once this story begins, there is no going back. I never believed in haunted houses. I believed in bad wiring, old pipes, animals in the walls, trauma, imagination, mold, drafts, creaky floors, all the logical things people use to explain fear when fear refuses to leave them alone. That belief died the night the house exhaled. It wasn't a sound at first, it was a feeling, a pressure change, like when a storm is about to break. My ears popped, my chest tightened, the air grew thick, warm, wet, like something organic, like lungs filled with rot. And then I heard it. A long, slow breath, not wind, not pipes, not wood settling, breathing. The house was breathing. My name is Daniel Crow, and this is what happened when I moved into 117 Black Hollow Road. The realtor never mentioned the smell. That's what I noticed first. Not a stench exactly, but a sweetness underneath the dust, like old flowers left too long in water, mixed with something metallic, like blood dried into fabric. She smiled too much, her lipstick cracked, her eyes darting to the corners of each room like she was afraid to look too long. She said the previous owners left suddenly. She said the house had character. What she didn't say was that every wall felt wrong. When you leaned close, the wallpaper pulsed. I thought it was my imagination, stress, a trick of the light. I laughed it off and signed the papers. I moved in alone. First night, nothing happened. Second night, I heard scratching behind the bedroom wall. Third night, whispers in the hallway when the lights were off. Still, I stayed, because denial is louder than fear, until fear learns how to scream. On the fourth night, at exactly 3:17, I woke to that pressure again, like the room was being squeezed, like the air was collapsing inward. And then the breath. A deep inhale from the walls themselves, followed by a slow, wet exhale that brushed across my face, though nothing was there. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't scream. My body felt like it had been nailed to the mattress. The ceiling light flickered, and from the far corner of the room, where darkness pooled like ink, I saw something unfold itself. It was tall, too tall, its limbs bent the wrong way, joints popping softly, like knuckles cracking under water. Its skin looked like peeling wallpaper, layers sloughing off to reveal raw darkness beneath. It didn't walk, it glided, and when it tilted its head, I realized its face was not a face at all, but a hole, a hollow space where something should be, a mouth that led nowhere, and yet I felt it smiling. "You live in me now," it whispered, but its voice came from the walls, from the floor, from inside my skull. I passed out. The next morning, there were fingerprints on my chest, bruised and purple, shaped like hands that were too long. I tried to leave that day. I packed my bags, dragged them to the door, turned the knob. It wouldn't open. The windows wouldn't open either. The house had sealed itself around me. Days passed. I stopped counting. The walls whispered my thoughts back to me before I could finish them. The mirrors showed me standing behind myself, smiling when I wasn't. Sometimes the floor felt soft, like muscle under carpet. At night, the breathing grew louder, and it came closer each time, until one night it climbed onto my bed and pressed its hollow face against mine, and I finally understood. The house wasn't haunted, it was hungry, and I was its meal. It learned my name after the first night, not because I told it, but because it tasted my thoughts the way mold tastes bread, spreading quietly until everything is infected. And by the time I realized what was happening, the silence itself felt like it was listening. Every shadow leaned closer when I moved. Every floorboard sighed like tired lungs when I walked. And even my own heartbeat sounded too loud, like it was echoing through someone else's chest. And I began to understand that this place was not just a house, it was a body, and I was trapped inside its ribs. I tried to mark the days by scratching lines into the wall with a kitchen knife, but every morning they were gone, smoothed over as if the plaster had healed itself overnight. And sometimes when I leaned close, I swore I could hear a faint clicking sound, like cartilage shifting, like bone knitting itself back together. And the smell grew stronger, sweet and coppery, like flowers left in a grave too long. The first time I tried to hurt the house, it hurt me back. I drove the knife deep into the wall of the living room, right where the wallpaper bubbled like skin in a fever, and the moment the blade pierced through, a thick, dark liquid oozed out, warm, pulsing, and the entire structure shuddered as if it had been struck in the heart. And before I could pull the knife free, something invisible wrapped around my wrist and squeezed until my fingers went numb. And a voice rose from the vents, from the cracks, from the floor itself, soft and amused and ancient, whispering, "You don't cut what keeps you alive." The wound sealed itself in seconds, but my hand stayed bruised for days, veins standing out black against my skin. After that, the house began to change me, not all at once, slowly, like a sickness that pretends to be nothing at first. I stopped feeling hungry. I stopped feeling tired. My reflection began to look slightly wrong, my eyes too dark, my smile lingering a second longer than it should. When I spoke, my voice echoed faintly even in open rooms, like there were hidden chambers inside me too. The thing came every night now. It would stand in doorways, unfold itself from corners, sometimes appearing as nothing but a shadow stretched too tall against the wall, and sometimes taking on shapes that almost looked human, but never quite right, like a mannequin left too close to a fire. And every time it drew closer, its hollow face inches from mine, I felt a tug inside my chest, like something was being gently pulled out of me. Not my soul, something deeper, memory. I started forgetting things, my mother's face, the sound of my own laughter. The name of the street I grew up on. And the house would whisper them back to me later, savoring them, repeating them slowly like a child tasting sugar for the first time. One night, while the breathing shook the walls so hard the ceiling dust drifted like snow, I heard another sound, crying. It came from beneath the floor. I dropped to my knees, pressing my ear to the carpet, and there it was again, thin and weak, like someone trapped in a long, dark place, begging without words. The house was not alone. I tore at the floorboards with my bare hands until my nails split and bled, until the skin on my palms burned raw, and beneath the wood I found a small door, hidden, sealed with rusted hinges and a padlock so old it crumbled when I touched it. Inside was a narrow staircase, spiraling down into darkness that smelled of earth and rot and old rain. The crying grew louder. Each step down felt heavier, like the air itself was trying to push me back, like the house didn't want me to see what it kept in its bones. At the bottom, there was a room. No windows, no light, just a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, flickering weakly. And in the center, a child. A little girl, no older than 8, her hair tangled, her skin pale, her eyes hollow with exhaustion, chained to a metal ring in the floor like an animal. When she looked up at me, she whispered my name. Not the way the house did, not hungry, not mocking, but desperate. "You have to help me," she said, tears streaking down her dirt-streaked face. "It won't let me go. It feeds on us. It makes us part of it." I rushed forward, reaching for her, but the moment my fingers brushed her skin, pain exploded through my head, a scream so loud it felt like my skull was splitting, and suddenly I was no longer in the basement. I was somewhere else, somewhere older. I saw the house being built, wood rising from soil soaked with something dark. I saw people moving in, families, laughter, children, and then fear, sickness, disappearances. I saw bodies buried beneath the foundation, their souls trapped, woven into the walls, the floors, the beams, becoming part of something that was never meant to exist. And at the center of it all, that same hollow presence, feeding, growing, learning. When I came back to myself, I was on the basement floor, the girl gone, the chains empty, swinging gently as if someone had just slipped free. But the crying hadn't stopped. It was inside the walls now, and so was she. The house had swallowed her again, and it was smiling through me, because now I knew the truth. It doesn't kill, it keeps. And once you belong to it, you never really leave. It knew I would come back down there. It knew because the house feels intention, the way skin feels heat. And the moment I reached the basement door again, the air thickened like syrup, every breath dragging through my lungs as if I were inhaling something alive, something that wanted to crawl inside me. And when I descended those steps a second time, I realized the walls were closer than before, the ceiling lower, the space tightening around me like a throat preparing to swallow. The chains were gone, not broken, gone. No marks on the floor, no rust stains, no sound but the slow drip of something thick from the ceiling, each drop hitting the ground with a wet smack that echoed too long for a room so small. And when I touched the floor, my fingers came back sticky, dark, and warm, pulsing faintly like it was still connected to something. The crying rose again, not from one place, but from everywhere, layered voices of children and adults, whispers and sobs woven together into one endless plea. And suddenly, the walls began to bulge, swelling outward in slow, rhythmic waves, as if something beneath the surface were pushing, trying to get out. Faces formed, dozens of them. Eyes opening in the plaster, mouths stretching in silent screams, hands pressing from the inside, their shapes warping the structure until the house itself looked like a living grave. And in that moment, I understood the real horror was not that the house was alive, but that it was full of lives that had never been allowed to die. The hollow thing emerged from the far corner, taller now, its limbs dragging along the floor, its shadow bending against the walls in impossible ways. And as it moved closer, I felt my heartbeat slow, my thoughts dim, like it was draining the light out of me. "You belong," it whispered, its voice layered with hundreds of others, a choir of stolen souls. "You were chosen the moment you crossed the threshold." I screamed for the first time since moving in, and the house screamed back. The floor lurched, throwing me against the wall, and when my head struck the plaster, something inside it cracked, and suddenly I was seeing not just what was happening now, but everything that had ever happened here, all at once, like the walls had opened their memory to me. I saw the first man who found the land, drawn by something he couldn't explain.
I saw him bury his sick wife beneath the foundation, begging the earth to keep her with him. I saw the thing rise from that grief, feeding on sorrow, growing stronger with every death, every secret, every soul that refused to let go. I saw the little girl again standing among the others, her eyes empty now, her voice part of the chorus that filled the walls. And then I saw myself, standing among them, already fading, already becoming part of the house. "No," I whispered, but my voice sounded distant, like it was echoing through someone else's body. The hollow thing reached out, its fingers brushing my chest, and I felt something tear loose inside me, a cold pulling sensation that made my vision blur, and for a terrifying second I thought it had taken my heart. But it was worse. It had taken my name. I couldn't remember who I was. The house began calling me by something else, something old, something that fit its shape, and when I tried to speak my own name, only silence came out. That was when I noticed the door. At the far end of the basement, where there had been only wall before, a narrow doorway stood, glowing faintly with pale light, like a wound in the darkness, and something inside me, the last piece that still felt human, knew that if I didn't step through it now, I would never leave. The house roared, the breathing becoming frantic, desperate as if it knew I was slipping from its grip. I ran. The floor tried to grab me, softening beneath my feet, the walls reaching inward, the voices screaming in anger and fear, but I threw myself through the doorway and felt the world tear apart around me. And then, silence. Cold air. Rain on my face. I lay in the mud outside, the house behind me standing still, quiet, empty, just an old structure on a lonely road, no breathing, no whispers, no movement, as if nothing ever had been wrong. But when I looked down at my hands, they were still stained dark, and in the window, for just a second, I saw my reflection smile when I did not. I thought escape meant freedom, but freedom is only real when something is not still following you. And as I lay there in the cold mud, staring at the house that now looked harmless and empty,
I felt a slow, creeping certainty settle in my chest that nothing inside those walls had truly let me go, that whatever I had torn free from that place had left a hollow space inside me that was now being filled by something else, something patient, something that had learned how to wear me the way it wore the house. I didn't go back. I ran. I walked until my legs shook, until the road blurred, until I found a gas station miles away where the lights buzzed too bright and the smell of burnt coffee felt like the most beautiful thing I had ever known. And when the cashier asked me if I was okay, I opened my mouth to answer and realized I still couldn't remember my name. It hovered just out of reach, like a word on the tip of my tongue, and the harder I tried to grasp it, the more my head throbbed, like something inside me was tightening its grip. I told him I had been in an accident. He believed me. Everyone always does. Days passed, then weeks, then months, and I tried to rebuild something that felt like a life, a small apartment, a quiet job, a routine that kept my hands busy and my mind distracted. But every night at 3:17, I woke up gasping, the memory of that breathing filling my ears, the echo of those whispers pressing against the inside of my skull like fingernails tapping from the other side. Sometimes I would catch my reflection moving when I was still. Sometimes I would hear a second set of footsteps in empty rooms. And sometimes, when the world was quiet enough, I could feel the faint rise and fall of something deep in my chest that was not my own. The house never left me. It moved, it changed, it learned. One evening, as rain streaked down my window in long, trembling lines, my phone vibrated with a notification from an unknown number, a single message with no sender, no contact name, just words that made my blood turn to ice. We are still breathing. I dropped the phone like it had burned me, but when I looked again, the screen was blank, no message, no record, no proof that it had ever been there. Except the smell. That same sweet metallic scent began to fill the room, faint at first, then stronger, and my walls seemed to lean inward, shadows stretching too far, the air growing thick and warm. And in that moment, I understood the truth I had been running from. The house was never a place, it was a presence, and it had learned how to live inside me. Now, when you feel a room grow quiet, when the air feels heavy, when the walls seem just a little too close, when your reflection lingers longer than it should, remember this: some houses don't trap people, some people become the house. And somewhere, right now, something is breathing through the walls, waiting for you to listen. Story 2: The Voice in the Static. From the very crackle of silence between these words, something is already trying to reach you, slipping through the empty spaces, hiding in the pauses. And before I tell you how I learned to fear my own voice, I need you to understand one thing. This story is not meant to be heard alone. So if your heart is already beating a little faster, if the dark around you feels heavier than it should, tap like, tap subscribe, and welcome back to Grimp Tap, because once the static starts, it never truly stops. It began with an old radio. Not special, not rare, just a dusty black box I found at a flea market on the edge of town, buried under broken clocks and rusted tools, its dial scratched, its speaker torn, its weight heavier than it looked, like it was holding something inside. The seller never met my eyes. When I picked it up, the static whispered. I thought it was feedback, loose wiring, nothing more. I took it home. The first night, I turned it on as a joke, just to hear that familiar hiss, that ocean of white noise that feels like the sound of nothing. And as the room filled with static, I felt a strange calm wash over me, like the world had softened, like every worry had been wrapped in cotton. Then I heard my name, clear, soft, spoken in my own voice. I froze, staring at the radio as if it might move. "Hello?" I whispered. The static surged, rising and falling like breath. "I'm here," my voice said back, stretched and distorted, layered with something else beneath it, something that didn't sound human. I shut the radio off. For hours, nothing happened. Then, as I lay in bed, drifting between sleep and waking, I heard it again, not from the radio this time, but from the corner of my room, from the shadows behind my door. My voice calling me. The next day, I tried to throw the radio away. The trash bag was on the curb, tied tight. When I came home, it was back on my table, still warm. That was when I realized this wasn't a device, it was a door, and something on the other side had learned how to speak through me. The radio began turning on by itself at exactly 2:46 every morning, not a second earlier, not a second later, the dial glowing faintly in the dark like a single unblinking eye. And when the static poured out, it felt thicker than sound, like a presence spilling into the room, pressing against my skin, crawling into my ears, filling the quiet with something that felt awake. At first, the voice only repeated what I had said during the day, fragments of conversations, half-finished thoughts, laughter, whispers I didn't remember making. But each night it grew bolder, changing the words, twisting them, asking questions in my own tone that I never would have asked. Why did you leave her? Do you miss the way it felt to hurt? Would you let me in if you knew what I could give you? I stopped sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt like I was falling backward into the static, into a cold, endless space where something waited, patient and amused, wearing the echo of my voice like a mask. I covered the radio with a blanket. The sound came through. I unplugged it. The sound continued. I smashed it against the wall, the casing splitting open, wires snapping free, and still the static hissed, now louder, now coming from everywhere, from the vents, from the walls, from inside my own head.
The voice began answering before I spoke. It finished my sentences. It laughed when I was afraid. It cried when I tried to pray. And slowly, impossibly, it began to feel like the truest version of me, the one that said everything I was too ashamed to admit. One night, as the static surged like a storm, the voice whispered something new. "Let me out." The air grew cold.
The shadows deepened, and in the reflection of the darkened screen, I saw not my face, but something else staring back, something that smiled when I did not. It followed me when I tried to run, when I left the apartment with nothing but my phone and the clothes on my back, when I drove through the night with the windows down, trying to drown the silence in wind and engine noise. But no matter how far I went, the hiss was always there beneath every sound, like a second heartbeat, like the echo of a world just behind this one. And when I stopped at a motel 3 states away and turned on the shower to wash the fear from my skin, the steam carried my voice back to me, whispering from the tiles, reminding me that distance means nothing to something that lives in the spaces between signals. The dreams started then. Not nightmares, not exactly, but invitations. Endless corridors made of flickering light, doors that opened onto memories I had forgotten, moments I wished I could change, and always, at the center of it all, that same static sea, rolling and endless, with something moving beneath the surface, shaping itself into my reflection. I began to hear other voices inside the hiss, faint, distant, crying for help, and I realized the truth too late. I wasn't the first. The voice wasn't copying me, it was collecting me, and every person it had ever spoken through was still trapped in the noise, layered together, a choir of stolen selves, feeding something that needed identity to survive. One night, when the static grew so loud it shook the walls, the voice said it was time. "Come home," it whispered, and I felt myself stepping forward, drawn toward the sound, toward the place where I would finally disappear. I don't remember walking to the radio, because by then it wasn't a thing anymore. It was everywhere, in the hum of the lights, in the buzz of my phone, in the electric pulse under my skin, and when I reached out, I wasn't touching plastic or wires, but something cold and endless, like the surface of deep water that pulls you in the moment you stop resisting, and the static swelled until the world felt thin, fragile like a sheet of glass ready to shatter. The voice spoke gently, lovingly, in the tone of someone who knows you better than you know yourself. You don't have to be alone anymore. The room dissolved. I was standing in a vast open space made of flickering light and shadow, the air alive with the low roar of static, and all around me were shapes, human outlines made of noise, their faces shifting, their mouths opening in silent screams, their eyes hollow and familiar, and in each one I saw a fragment of myself, a memory, a fear, a secret I had never spoken aloud. The thing wearing my voice stepped forward. It was tall, featureless, its surface rippling with static like living skin. "You are the last piece," it said. I felt myself fading, my thoughts dissolving into the noise, my identity stretching thin, and in that moment of terror I did the only thing I could think of. I screamed
screamed, not into the static, through it. I let every memory, every regret, every piece of myself surge outward at once, overwhelming the signal, flooding it with more than it could hold, and the noise cracked, fractured, splintering like glass under pressure. There was a blinding flash, then silence. I woke on the motel floor, the radio dark, cold, empty. The static was gone, but sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet, I still hear a faint hiss beneath the silence, and I know somewhere in the spaces between signals, something is waiting to speak again. Story 3, The Man Who Only Walks at Night. From the moment you hear this, you should understand something is already pacing just beyond your sight, moving through the dark the way breath moves through lungs. And before I tell you why I no longer sleep with the lights off, I need you to know that some footsteps are not meant to be followed. So if your chest feels tight and the silence around you feels a little too deep, tap like, tap subscribe, and welcome back to Grimp Tap, because this story begins the second the sun goes down. I first noticed him on my walk home from work. Same time every night, same empty street, same stretch of flickering streetlights. At exactly 9:47, when the last glow of sunset vanished and the shadows grew long and sharp, I saw a tall figure at the far end of the road, standing perfectly still beneath the broken lamp-post, his outline too dark against the night, his face hidden. When I took a step, he took one too, not toward me, away, always just far enough to stay in sight, never close enough to reach. I told myself it was coincidence, a neighbor, a stranger, nothing more. But he was there the next night, and the next, always walking only when I did, stopping when I stopped, like a reflection in the dark. The air felt colder when he appeared, the sounds of the city fading until only our footsteps remained, echoing too loud, too slow, as if the world itself was holding its breath. One night, curiosity outweighed fear. I followed him. The moment I matched his pace, the street seemed to stretch, the distance between us staying the same no matter how fast I walked, the lights dimming behind me, as if the world were slowly closing its eyes, and when I tried to call out, my voice felt swallowed by the dark, vanishing before it reached him. He never looked back, not once. His coat hung too still, not moving with the air, his steps making no sound, even though mine echoed like they were struck against hollow ground. And with every block we passed, the houses grew stranger, windows dark, doors sealed, as if the neighborhood itself was slowly emptying. I felt like I was walking into a place that didn't exist in daylight. Finally, at the edge of town, where the street gave way to a narrow path lined with dead trees, he stopped. For the first time he turned his head, and I saw his face, or what should have been a face. It was smooth, featureless, like skin stretched over nothing. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just a pale mask that reflected the faint glow of the moon. Terror locked my body in place. He raised one hand, pointing down the dark path behind him, and without a word he began to walk again, disappearing into the trees. Something inside me screamed to run, but my feet moved forward. The forest swallowed the last of the streetlight behind me, and the darkness felt thick enough to
touch, every step deeper into the trees, pulling me farther from the world I knew, the air cold and still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and ahead of me his silhouette glided between the trunks, always just visible enough to follow, never close enough to reach.
The sounds of the city faded completely, replaced by a low, distant hum that felt like it was coming from the ground itself, vibrating through my bones, and the farther I went, the more the world seemed to bend, the trees leaning inward, their branches intertwining like ribs forming a tunnel of shadow. Time lost meaning. I don't know how long I walked, minutes, hours, maybe longer. At last, the path opened into a clearing, and at its center stood a single stone marker, weathered and cracked, half buried in the soil. The man stopped beside it. He turned to face me again, his blank face reflecting the moonlight, and slowly, impossibly, words began to appear across the smooth surface of his skin, carving themselves into him like scars. They formed a name. My name. A chill ran through me. The ground beneath my feet shifted, softening, and I realized with horror that the clearing was filled with shallow depressions, dozens of them, each shaped like a human body, as if the earth itself had been pressed down by those who had lain there and never risen. The man lifted his hand and pressed it to his chest. Then he pointed to me, and in that moment I understood. He wasn't leading me to my grave. He was showing me where I had already been. The moment I tried to step back, the ground tightened around my shoes like wet clay, pulling me down inch by inch, the earth cold and heavy, clinging to my skin as if it recognized me, as if it had been waiting for my weight to return. And the man stood motionless, his blank face still bearing my name, watching with a patience that felt older than the forest itself. Panic tore through me. I clawed at the soil, feeling it slide between my fingers, filling my nails, my mouth, my lungs, and in the desperate blur of terror, I saw flashes of other nights, other versions of myself, walking this same path, following this same figure, vanishing one by one into the dark, leaving only echoes behind. The humming grew louder, vibrating through my chest until my heartbeat matched its rhythm, and the world began to fade at the edges, my vision narrowing, the stars above smearing into pale streaks. The man stepped forward. For the first time, he reached out and touched me, his hand cold, weightless like fog against my skin, and when his fingers brushed my forehead, I felt memories drain away, my childhood, my dreams, my fears dissolving into nothing until only the night remained. I woke in my bed. Morning light streamed through the window. For a moment, I thought it had all been a dream, until I noticed the dirt under my nails and the faint outline of a name pressed into my skin. Not mine. Story 4. The Room That Knows Your Name. From the moment these words reach you, there is a place somewhere that already knows who you are, not your face, not your voice, but the sound your fear makes when you are completely alone. And before I tell you why I will never stay in a hotel room without checking the walls, I need you to do one thing. If your skin is already crawling and your instincts are telling you to listen closely, tap like, tap subscribe, and welcome to Grimp Tap, because this story begins the moment a door closes behind you. It was supposed to be just one night, a business trip, a cheap hotel off the highway, flickering neon sign, cracked pavement, the kind of place you forget the second you leave.
Room 417. The key card felt warm when I took it from the clerk. He hesitated before handing it over, his fingers lingering a second too long, his eyes lifting to meet mine with something close to pity, and when I asked if there was a problem, he shook his head too quickly and said nothing, just watched as I walked toward the elevator like he already knew I wouldn't be coming back the same. The hallway on the 4th floor smelled wrong, not dirty, not moldy, old, like dust sealed away for years and suddenly exposed to air again. The lights hummed overhead, uneven, flickering, and with every step toward my room, the sound seemed to change pitch, dropping lower, deeper, until it vibrated faintly in my chest. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the silence, not quiet, silent, the kind of silence that presses against your ears, that makes you aware of your own breathing, your own pulse, your own presence. The door shut behind me with a soft click, and the room exhaled. I froze. The air shifted, warm and stale, like a breath released after being held too long, and for just a second I felt like I had stepped into something that had been waiting. I told myself it was nerves. I dropped my bag, turned on the lamp, and that's when I saw the writing. Carved on the wall above the bed, shallow but deliberate, letters etched into the paint like someone had taken their time, like they wanted it to last. It was my name, perfectly spelled, my full name. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. I stepped closer, my fingers hovering inches from the wall, and the moment I whispered my own name, the lights flickered, the hum deepened, and somewhere inside the walls, something shifted. The room knew I was there. The longer I stood there staring at my name carved on the wall, the letters seemed to sink inward, not fading, not smearing, but slowly pressing deeper, as if the wall itself were softening around them, as if the room itself was pulling the words inside its skin. And when I touched the surface, it felt warm, faintly damp, like something alive beneath a thin shell of paint. I stumbled back, my breath coming too fast, the silence stretching, thick and heavy, until the low hum returned, vibrating through the bed frame, the lamp, the floor, traveling straight into my bones, and I felt the strangest sensation that I was no longer alone, not in the way you're alone in a quiet room, but in the way you are when something is just behind you, close enough to feel, but not close enough to see. I turned. Nothing, yet the air felt disturbed, like it had just moved. I tried the door, locked. I hadn't locked it. The handle wouldn't budge, the card reader dark, unresponsive, and when I pressed my ear against the wood, I heard no sounds from the hallway, no footsteps, no voices, just the same low hum, now seeping through the door like a distant echo. My phone had no signal, no bars, no service. Even the clock on the bedside table was frozen at 3:17, the same time every time I looked. That's when the whisper came, not loud, not clear, just my name, breathed softly from the corner near the ceiling, stretching the syllables as if tasting them, and the wall where the carving had been was now smooth, unmarked, as if the letters had never been there at all. But I felt them inside me. The whisper grew stronger as the minutes stretched into something that no longer felt like time, my name repeating in different tones, sometimes gentle, sometimes mocking, sometimes layered with voices that did not sound human. And the walls seemed to lean inward just slightly, close enough that I felt the pressure change against my skin, like the room was drawing me into a slow, invisible embrace.
The bed sheets shifted when I wasn't touching them. The lamp flickered in uneven rhythms that matched my heartbeat, and every reflective surface showed something wrong, my reflection lagging a fraction of a second behind my movements, my eyes darkening when I looked too long, my mouth curving into a smile I wasn't making. The hum deepened. It felt like it was coming from beneath the floor now, rising up through the soles of my feet, into my legs, my spine, settling behind my eyes where a dull ache began to throb, and with it came memories that weren't mine, flashes of other people standing in this same room, reading their own names on the wall, feeling the same fear, making the same mistakes. They had all stayed. They had all listened. I tried to scream, but my voice came out thin, swallowed by the hum, and the air grew colder, the shadows darker, until the corners of the room looked deeper than they should, like doorways into somewhere else. Then the wall above the bed began to change. Letters emerged again, slowly, carving themselves outward this time, pushing through the paint as if something beneath the surface were writing with unseen hands. Not my name. A number. 417. And beneath it, a single word. Stay. The moment the word stay finished carving itself into the wall, the hum swelled into a deep, vibrating roar that filled my ears and my chest and the very space behind my eyes, the air growing thick and heavy like it was being pulled into a single point, and I felt myself losing the edges of who I was, my thoughts stretching thin, my memories blurring, as if the room were gently erasing me to make space for something else. The bed creaked, though I hadn't moved. The door rattled once, twice, then fell silent, and the shadows detached from the corners, sliding slowly across the walls, like dark water, pooling at my feet, rising up my legs, cold and weightless, wrapping around me with a softness that felt wrong, too gentle for something that was stealing me away. My name echoed one last time, not whispered, not spoken, but felt, vibrating through every part of me, and I realized with a sinking clarity that the room didn't trap bodies, it trapped identities. It kept the echo of who you were, feeding on the shape of you, learning how to call the next one. The walls brightened suddenly, the hum cut off, the shadows vanished, and the room looked ordinary again, quiet, empty, harmless. The door clicked open, morning light spilled in. I stepped into the hallway, my legs shaking, my mind foggy, a sense of loss hanging over me like a forgotten dream, and when I passed the front desk, the clerk looked up and smiled politely. "Checking out room 417?" he asked. I nodded. He paused. "Name?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, and somewhere behind me, a door softly closed, breathing in. And now the silence returns. But if you're still feeling that chill, if one of these stories followed you into the dark, don't let it fade. Tell us in the comments which story haunted you the most and where you're listening from right now. Your words matter here. If you want to keep walking into the shadows with us, subscribe to Grimp Tap and become part of this growing nightmare family. We are waiting for you, and we truly appreciate every one of you. Until next time, sleep carefully.